We talked a while ago, Mike, about Bigfoot, and I kind of half-heartedly wrote off Bigfoot. I wholeheartedly wrote off the Loch Ness Monster, and that one we agreed upon, but...
Yeah, Nessie can fuck off. I'm done with Nessie. I'm done with that shit.
There's a record number of sightings of Nessie going on right now.
Yeah, and they're fucking logs and sturgeons and seals, and that's it. And barn owls and Scottish pachyderms.
Yeah. But Bigfoot's kind of... I don't know, maybe it's just been years and years of bad television shows, and it's just, maybe I'm just blind or sick of it, but like I said, I half-heartedly gave up on Bigfoot, and that is until I came across a certain YouTube channel. I'll leave the link to the channel in the video that he talks about one of these stories that we're going to talk about, but I don't know. There's been a lot of people to take a scientific approach to Bigfoot, and it almost gets lost on me. And there's always somebody when you got to mention when you talk about Bigfoot and science, and that's Jeff Meldrum.
Yeah.
He's interesting. This video kind of talks about him too, and they break down his credentials. Holy fucking shit. If you look up Jeff Meldrum, you'll find articles about how he was made an outcast by colleges because of his Bigfoot research. But this guy's like the Terminator of Bigfoot research. You couldn't program a person better to be doing this.
Yeah, he's an anthropologist, and he's been studying the topic for such a long time, and he's even had his own experience too, which is also interesting. I don't know if the experience is what started him on the path to researching Bigfoot, or if he had the experience when he already had the interest. I can't recall, but he's a really interesting dude, and he's got a doctorate in anthropology. He's a professor. I can't remember where he's a professor off the top of my head, but he's got legit credentials, and he puts his career and reputation on the line to argue for Bigfoot. And it's funny. I just last night I sent you a picture of homework that I'm doing with my youngest. I'm sure most of the country now is homeschooling their kids at this point, but we've been working on homework with him, and every week he gets this little like newspaper thing that they read in school. When we were kids, they were called weekly readers. I don't know what they're called now, but it's like a little news informative thing. It's like 8 pages long, but this week they had one of the segments, because they always do a like point and counterpoint debate about certain topic. And this week it was about the existence of Bigfoot, and the person that they had going for Bigfoot was Jeff Meldrum, which it was really cool to see in my kids' homework, Jeff Meldrum arguing for Bigfoot.
That is super cool, man. Now, I fear that a lot of people who have heard the name just lump him in with that rash of bad television that I mentioned before. And not to say that he was a part of bad television. To me, he's like the bottom line authority when it comes to Bigfoot. I've always enjoyed watching him talk about Bigfoot. But for some reason in my mind, when I thought back about him, just, watching that video and reading about it a little bit, I just thought of all those documentaries that just happened to be clustered in there. But he's done a lot of great stuff. I mean, in the video, they mention a list of his credentials. And I mean, like, I'm not kidding when I say you couldn't program somebody better. He's got like degrees in fucking animal feet, and then primate feet, and then the study of how primate feet change through evolution, and then tracking, and I mean, just everything you can think of. And then about 20 things you haven't thought of that would be perfect for somebody trying to track down a Bigfoot. I mean, he's the man as far as that goes. But the YouTube channel is it's called Bob Gymlan, and it's not the whole Bob Gymlan from the famed booby having Bigfoot footage. But he does a great job. In his channel, he talks about how he spent a lot of time with primates and is very learned from what I understand. And he does such a great job of breaking down Bigfoot stuff. And it's not all this way, but I don't know how I can say it. He kind of does a great job of bringing a lot of evidence, which for me, he almost proves that a lot of the cases that we know about that have been proven to be hoaxes or other animals weren't hoaxes or not animals. Maybe not so much that they're a Bigfoot, but presents a lot of sound science that they got a lot of these cases wrong. And in this case, watching this video, I had to just share this with you guys. And again, I'll put the video in the show notes so you guys can watch it. And I'm not going to spill everything this kid did and, just mimic his video, but it's such an amazing story. What are your feelings on Bigfoot nowadays, Mike? I mean, just meat and potatoes Bigfoot, a giant fucking primate that's undocumented, roaming forested areas all over the globe.
I love meat and potatoes Bigfoot. Like, it just makes me picture a regular Bigfoot, but he's like a lumberjack or something. just going out in the woods, putting on his flannel shirt and chopping down trees. Meat and potatoes Bigfoot. But my opinion on Bigfoot is the same as it's been for a long time. I think that it's not a lost species of hominid. I kind of think that would be cool if it was. Like, hey, there's been this lost. It would be amazing, but it would lose the mystery, and just that would bum me out that there was no longer a mystery. But I still think that it's some sort of interdimension. Well, maybe not interdimensional, but like one of those beings that is able to slip through the different realities that exist from physical to non-physical, and they're able to find ways through here, and they show up and they do what they do, and then they disappear, whether it be by intention or mistake. I don't know, but I don't think that they're actual lost species.
Really, even with the talk of different species of Bigfoot, reported in different areas?
Well, is it different species or is it just different beings? Like you get the different fur colors. So some of them are more of a brownish, reddish color. Some of them tend more towards the dark brown, some towards gray. Most times they do have a bald face. But so from what I'm saying, like I'm not saying that they're spiritual creatures. Like they're not ghosts. Like when they're here, they're absolutely physical. And whether it be that they exist in like another reality and they come through, or if it's like a weird like time anomaly and we're seeing something like maybe two periods in time overlapping each other, and we're witnessing something that used to live here, and maybe it was something that used to live all over the world. Maybe it was the lost civilization that existed before people. There's they kind of occasionally will lean towards that in Ancient Aliens, but of course in Ancient Aliens it's aliens that was the lost civilization. But when you look at like a lot of alternative historians, there's a lot of talk about these civilizations that may have been millions of years old, that were potentially non-human civilizations, that maybe they were some sort of other intelligent hominid species. And what if we're seeing like an overlap of that period in time where these beings were all over the world, and that was like the world civilization.
That's very interesting.
Or maybe they're like the great race of Yith, and they're just able to project themselves through time.
Yeah, they just cut out long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all ideas that are fascinating, and you kind of almost got to go that way if you want to think that Bigfoot's a real thing, because there's no hard evidence. But that's precisely what this kid on this YouTube channel does. I mean, if he's full of shit and he's lying or whatever, I'm sold. I'm 100% sold. Like I said, entertain the thought of him wearing a belt buckle that allows him to teleport and all those cool things. But he does a great job of explaining it as just being a fucking giant undocumented ape. If you guys go check out his channel, I think he'll do a good job of demonstrating his points. It's kind of a really cool breath of fresh air for Bigfoot for me. I kind of started to believe the hype that we should have something by now, but I don't know. He talks a lot about their stealth capabilities and
yeah, and I think even if it were a situation where it was just a lost species of hominid that existed in various parts across the world, I still don't think that the fact that we don't have a body would not be proof. There's a lot of times when we have thought something was extinct and then we find it. And a lot of these things, and especially if they're intelligent, you have to think that they would view us as a potential threat. And knowing what humans are capable of would want to stay away from humans. And especially in the Pacific Northwest, there is a lot of densely forested area that there's places that it's thought that no human foot has ever walked through before. And we've got areas like that. Who knows what could be there? If there is this lost species of hominid, that would be the perfect place to go and hide out and live your crazy wild man lifestyle in the woods and hunt and gather and frolic around naked,
busting nuts and making trees.
Being Bigfoot. Yeah. Just like Bigfoots do. And then like even think about other areas of the world where Bigfoot is sighted. It's almost like the range of Bigfoot. Climate doesn't matter. I mean, there's the skunk ape in Florida. There's what's it called in the Yowie in Australia, I think. Then there's the Yeti in the Himalayas. You know, it's all over the place. It doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, and all these places, all these different continents have reports and long histories with Bigfoot-like creatures. I mean, that just goes to lending that these things are used to dealing with fucking people and know to stay the fuck away from them. They've had as long as time to train to stay away from people as long as they've been around people.
Yeah, it's what if it's like the SCP thing we did where humans came in and they're like, you know what? Fuck you, Sam Squanch. We're going to kill you. And then they did a Holocaust, and then all the remaining ones became stupefied.
Yeah. I mean, they could have definitely called them out of areas. If you're a Bigfoot and 27 dudes roll up on horses and kill your whole tribe.
And I mean, we know just by human history that that's a very human thing to do. I mean, we even kill each other off. Look at what we did to the natives here and in South America. So it's, you know, it's I wouldn't put it past early man to be a douchebag even back then and commit a Holocaust just to assert dominance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we as a species are pretty fucking douchey.
It's how you get to the top, baby.
Yeah. Ugh. Gross.
The case that I wanted to share with everybody is about a dude named Doug Hychek, and he is a TV film producer and possibly someone who's come across some of the most solid evidence for a Bigfoot ever. He was hired by a TV station out of Minneapolis to do a documentary about a lake in northern Canada, a lake called Lake Selwyn. And the name of the documentary was called The Lake That's Never Been Fished. And that's because at that time, it was fairly unfished. People rarely settled there. And at this point in time or history or whatever you want to call it, people really weren't settling there at all. And his job was to go capture some footage of the nature and shit, fish from around this lake. It's in a very, very, very isolated area. It's so isolated that the crew, which only consisted of Hichek and one cameraman, had to be flown into the area on one of those puddle jumper planes, the ones that you can land on water. There's no land that's clear of trees enough to just land a regular plane there. But as soon as they hit the beach to where they wanted to set up, both Hichek and the cameraman noticed something that 100% totally should not have been there. And that was a long, long trail of footprints in the sand. Now, he said that these footprints were about 17 inches long and 9 inches wide. And I've did some measurements on a piece of paper here, and I've drawn, to the best of my ability, a 17-inch long, 9-inch wide foot. And I've traced my foot, which is a size 13 foot over it. And this is crazy, man. I'm going to send it to you, Mike. It's just a goddamn massive footprint. It's only a couple 4 inches longer than my foot, but the width on this thing is just insane. And what was interesting about him seeing these tracks was that he had just started production on a documentary about bears. It was actually called The Man Who Walks with Bears. So he had a little bit of advanced knowledge on the subject, being a film producer. And what the kid talks about in the video is how this dude just assumed that they were bear tracks. And he went on with the questioning of how a bear did this, which I think is kind of silly. If even a bear left these tracks, we're talking about a 25-foot tall bear or something insane. So take a look at that picture I sent you, Mike. This is 14 inches long and 9 inches wide.
Yeah, that is a big fucking foot. Now, I can understand seeing, and especially for if you know the average person were to come upon a single bear track from a hind foot. If you were to see that, then it you might think that it was a Bigfoot foot. They're very large, and they almost make toe impressions, but you can also see the claw impressions, especially if it's in like mud or wet sand, something like that. You'd be able to see the full impression of the paw with the claws. But if it's not, if you don't have the right medium, you'll just see the imprints of the toe pads, and it really looks kind of similar to a human foot, except considerably wider than a human foot. But it's, you know, long. But the difference with bears are that their front paws are different shaped than their rear paws. So the rear paws are larger, they're longer and wider, and the front paws are wider, but they're shorter. So when you're seeing a bear, especially if you're seeing a whole line of bear tracks, you're going to be able to see the front feet and the back feet. And occasionally you might have an area where the back foot would land in the same place as the front foot would land, which would create like a larger looking footprint. But you're not going to get that impression for a mile. And these guys were tracing the footprints for a mile. So you're not going to have a bear that's walking on its hind legs for a mile. And for two, if you did, you're going to get a very different stride. Because if you've ever seen a bear walking on its hind legs, it's kind of more like it's shambling or shuffling than actually walking. It's maintaining balance. It's not using it as an actual means of conveyance.
Yeah, a mode of transportation. When bears are doing that, they're usually standing, or when you see them walking, it's in a circus-like setting or situation.
Yeah, like in the wild, they'll rear up on their hind legs, but usually it's to get a better look or to smell. It's not used to stand up on their hind legs and walk. It's no advantage for a bear to do that. It's awkward for them, and it doesn't make sense. And a bear will not do that for over a mile.
Yeah, this story comes from one of Jeff Meldrum's books, and I'll put that book in the show notes too. But the kid in the video mentions that in the story, the telling of the story, the guy mentions that after a mile, they kind of make the choice to not find whatever's leaving these giant 2-foot prints in the sand.
And they said that they noticed how fresh they were. And because they were so fresh, they didn't want to continue following it for fear that they would run into it. But at that point in time, he was still thinking it was a bear. And because of the size of the track, he thought it was a massive Kodiak bear.
That would have been enough to scare me off of that beach. I would have went somewhere else. But they said that when they saw them, they asked the pilot, "What the fuck is this? What is this about?" And he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to take any time being there. He threw their shit out and said, "See you later," and took off. And they noted that he didn't come back. Maybe he would have taken pictures of them making the discovery, or if it was a hoax, somebody would have been observing them to, I don't know, reap the rewards of their hoax. But that person didn't seem like they wanted to be there. Maybe that's why it was fairly uninhabited. Maybe the locals knew something.
Maybe this was like the early reservations, and early man back in the day said, "All right, we will give you this area, and you can do with this area what you want, and we'll stay away from it." And they're like, "All right, that's cool, but if you show up, we're gonna rip your arms off and beat you to death with them." Like, fair enough, and that's where they left it.
Now the young man who does the YouTube video, he'll go into a lot about authenticity and witness credibility, and he does a great job of it. He'll go more into the tracks and comparing it to a bear. Long story short, he makes a real strong connection that this is more of an ape footprint. For me, he definitely proves that it is not a bear footprint, that it is an ape footprint. But then the question still remains, if this is an ape footprint, what the fuck? Because it's goddamn giant. It makes no fucking sense. And he also talks about how this must have made an impression on this TV film producer, because he went on to produce a television show called Monster Quest. So he spent, it appears, the remainder of his entire career with that experience in mind. Now, after watching this video, and when somebody presents the type of science that this young man presents in his YouTube video, what did you think about that story?
Well, for one, the story itself is creepy as shit. Like, just the fact, like, think about the documentary that he was filming, the title that he gave it, The Lake That No One Has Fished. Like, just that kind of has an ominous sound to it. and then he flies in, lands the plane on the lake. Like this could be the setup for a movie. Like, they fly in, they land on the lake. The guy and the cameraman get off the plane. They get onto the shore. They look down, and they see these tracks that look fresh in the sand. And while they're waiting for the pilot to unpack and unload all of his stuff, they decide to take the walk, and they go take the walk and go follow the tracks. And they notice these tracks are just, they're bipedal tracks. They're not quadrupeds. They're not bear tracks, even though, in the real story, he thought they were bear tracks. But because this is a movie now, he realizes they're not bear tracks. Yep. And then you hear rustle in the woods. He looks up, and then we cut to the title card. And then, back from the title card, it cuts to them running back down the beach, and the pilot's like, "What the hell's going on?" Like, "Get back in the plane! Get back in the plane!" And they all climb back on the plane, and, "What the fuck is going on? Just go! Just go!" And then they take off, and they make it back to civilization. And then you cut, and then they're like at a bar or something, and the one dude's hand is shaking as he's trying to take a drink. And then he's got to relate the story of how they saw Bigfoot, and they had to run for their very lives from the savage beast, and then we're off and running, and we got a movie, motherfuckers.
It sounds like hundreds of other Bigfoot encounters, man. I mean, after watching this kid's videos and how he explains things. It puts all those stories like that in a new light for me. Because I mean, I don't know shit about science. This kid could just be using fucking fancy words and be completely full of shit. But I mean,
see, for me, Jeff Meldrum has always been, he's always been like what I like to say the voice of reason in the Bigfoot community, or yeah, we'll say the voice of reason. Like he's not one that's going to just accept all evidence as being evidence of Bigfoot. He looks for very specific things. He's as you mentioned earlier, he is very well versed in footprints and tracks, and he has been able to obtain samples of footprints that actually show dermal ridges in the foot. Now, for people that don't know it, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, can you go into this dermal ridging stuff? Because this is fascinating. And this, when I was younger and I heard about Meldrum's cast that had dermal ridging on it, that's not something I ever thought would be possible to catch with a cast.
Yeah, the dermal ridges, for those that don't know, they're the if you look at the bottom of your foot, you've got a foot pattern. And in humans, we have a distinct foot pattern in that our dermal ridges run right to left across the width of our foot. Most primate species kind of have this swirling effect, where they'll have areas that kind of have like an elliptical type imprint that'll go down, but then there'll be other ones that kind of come in from the side. So it creates this kind of swirled effect on the bottom of the foot.
Yeah, this is basically the swirls and lines on your skin that make up your fingerprints.
Right. And every foot has its own unique one as well. With the samples that have been obtained for tracks from Bigfoot, they've shown that the dermal ridges run the length of the foot rather than the width of the foot, but they're distinctly there. So it's a distinct pattern that kind of, if you look at primates, they kind of have a combination of both.
Yeah, some of the prints, like just to put it more black and white, if humans' patterns go left to right and apes are swirled, his cast of Bigfoot prints that have dermal ridging show dermal ridging of a mixture of both, as it should be if we're talking about a giant primate, right?
Yeah, or even if we're looking at the potential evolutionary links between modern primates and modern humans. We know that there was a point in human history where humans did live on the earth with at least 2 to 3 other hominid species. What happened to them is still a mystery. We don't know. We know in at least some regard that we bred out the Neanderthals. Anybody who were to get their DNA tested today would have Neanderthal DNA in their makeup. And that's just because at some point in the past, the two species interbred and Homo sapiens won out and became the dominant species. What happened to the other hominids? There's theories, but we don't really know. I mean, there's the Homo florensis, which was the hobbit, and coincidentally, the bones were found near on a island across from areas where orang pendek is reported to be seen today, which is a small, hairy hominid species, which is what they assume Homo florensis is. And this was something that had been reported before the bones were even discovered. So it's the sightings existed, and then we find just off the coast the island where Homo florensis bones were found, and it's very, I don't want to say coincidental, but it's it's a very odd coincidence
Mm-hmm.
But it would make sense to have, if we share an ancestor, and let's say we, like we did with the other hominid species, we became the dominant ones, and maybe some of these species did retreat back into the wilds just to escape the burgeoning civilization of humanity, and maybe they had a taste of it in the early days before the vast cities were built, when human settlements were being created. Maybe they just saw the writing on the wall and they're like, you know what, we need to get the fuck away from these people. Because I mean, you got to think, in human history there was a time when, as a species, we lived as part of nature. You know, part of the food chain. We were just like other animals, just more intelligence.
Yeah, definitely, truly part of the animal kingdom.
Right. We were just more intelligent than them, and we figured out a way to use tools. But once we started separating ourselves from nature, I think that's when things went downhill, because then we started carving out our own place. Like, this, we're humans. This is our place, and we claim this as ours. Instead of being part of the land was now ours. And we made that separation. And if this is an intelligent species that was still living in concert with the land, and they see what's becoming of humanity, and they're like, it's only a matter of time. They saw the writing on the wall, and they're like, fuck these guys. We're going reclusive, and that's that. And then they became things of legends. You know, maybe there was a time when they were like neighbors to people, and there were settlements of Bigfoot and settlements of humans, and then there was a separation. Something happened, and they fucking left. Like, nope, we need to bail. And then it went from being a regular thing to a thing of legend. And then as Europeans came over, it became like this native legend, where it was, you know, just thought of something being told by the people that were here, but they don't know any better. They're not educated. They don't have God. You know, that it's up to us to tell them what's right and what's real, and these spirit beings that are all throughout their folklore and all these other figures they're bullshit. So, you know, let's kill them too, because that's what they do. We don't understand the people. We don't understand their way of life. So let's kill them, or make them the enemy, or demonize them. You know, natives, witches, communists, terrorists. It's all the same to the scared white European.
I mean, justifiably, if you go and see natives and they tell you stories about giant wild men that are 9 or 10 feet tall, I think I'd shoot and ask questions later. Not so much they got, like I said, if I see some scaly green skin and a purple shiny lacy robe, I'm shooting instantly. But that's got to be scary. Like you said, these people are hucking in the wilderness. I think about like that movie The Witch that that we both like, you know, living like that, and then having to deal with the wilderness, and then something like that could be out there. And then there's hundreds of countless stories of people from that time reporting weird screams, rock throwing, all that shit, man. That's got to be horrifying. I mean, like you said, like that experience could have been a movie. The last thing I expected, like them to find on the beach, was footprints. The footprints of anything. I almost expected to see like I would have like chuckled at like a fire that had just been put out, but not to hear them find 14-inch footprints. That's truly that's terrifying.
What if this lake, the lake that no one fished, is the reason that they don't fish there is because long ago that's where the people in the surrounding areas would go to dump their deformed children, and then their deformed children set up a society of deformed people and had babies that are further deformed. And these footprints were just from some poor sap who has very oddly large feet. And he likes the feeling of sand between his toes, but he can't do it at a public beach because everyone's like, hey, look at Freakazoid with his big flipper feet. And he's like, oh, man. So he goes to this beach where he can just take his shoes off and just let his massively, freakishly huge feet breathe and feel the sand between his abnormally large toes. He just wants to relax.
Yeah, they
He's not a
scared the
monster.
shit out of the poor guy.
Yeah, he saw him coming, so he tries to pick up the pace, and then they keep coming. He's like, oh, fuck. So he runs into the woods and he hides. He's like, don't look at my hideous feet.
So what do you think about when you hear about dermal ridging in casts? That's apparently something that's going to be almost impossible to fake in a footprint, especially when you're talking about hoaxers. I mean, I remember, what was that, the Minnesota Iceman? They had the guy who worked on Planet of the Apes value that if that was a costume to be like I think it was like $20,000, something insane. And you got to be spending that type of money if you're faking prints with dermal ridging. I mean, Jeff Meldrum has prints in his collection that have dermal ridging and then have scars on the dermal ridging.
Yeah, that's really interesting, the scars. Now, for a professional skeptic, if you were to be one of them, anything is debunkable. I've heard skeptics claim that at first it was that it's just some asshole walking around with these big wooden cutout feet. And some of them, you see some of these casts, and that's what it really looks like.
Yeah.
Just some asshole went out there with a big wooden foot stamp and just started stomping through the mud. But then you got these other ones that they look real. You can see the dermal ridges. You can see the places where the toes dug in deeper, and you can see the spaces between the toes and the place where the toes would connect to the foot, and you can see a lot of details. But what skeptics say is that it was somebody that used one of these like wooden foot stamps in the mud and then very lightly pushed their foot into it to leave the impression of their dermal ridging. But because this thing is so wide, they turned their feet the other way. So that's why the dermal ridging is going lengthwise rather than widthwise.
Well, from what I understand with tracks and making tracks and leaving tracks, you have to put down a certain amount of weight and get down far enough to make a castable track. So I don't think anybody's lightly touching shit when it comes to supposed Bigfoot tracks, or their casts at least.
What I think it is it's barn owls. No,
barn owls that have been genetically modified to have giant monkey feet.
No. They do not have giant monkey feet. What they're doing is they're working with the lizard people to create these fake looking feet. So they design this stamp that's somewhat flexible, yet rigid, so that it gives the flat foot appearance that they're looking for. And then very, very delicately, the barn owls come in and they press their wings against the imprints. And the texture of the wings and the veins of the feathers are what creates the dermal ridging.
Ooh.
Now, see, when I said it was barn owls, people were like, oh, how the fuck is a barn owl good? It's because they're working with the lizard men. So
they've been trained.
Barn owls can't do it by themselves, guys. Sometimes they need help.
Yeah,
and who better to help than the fucking lizard people?
Yeah, they've trained them in the ways of track falsification.
Yeah, it's all a way to trick humanity into being forever afraid. If they can keep you out of the woods, then they can have their weird owl lizard orgies, and no one will ever see them. But if you're there, it makes it a lot harder to put together. And then if you're caught, it gets really fucking awkward.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've talked a lot this past year about disclosure when it comes to the alien shit. That whole world's been shaking a lot lately. And after seeing some of these videos and other videos of Bigfoot, a while ago I did a big old rabbit hole dive into just most authentic Bigfoot footage, and there's a lot of stuff that's questionable. Like, holy shit, I can't laugh at that one right away. When do you think we're gonna get any type of evidence of a Bigfoot? I mean, for me, I don't think any video footage is gonna be proof to me, and we've talked about that in depth before. But when do you think we're gonna be sure those things do or do not exist?
That will not happen until human civilization crumbles and we're forced to go back into tribal lifestyle.
Ooh, we have to start invading their territory and they're going to kick us right the fuck out.
Not even the invading thing. I think it's going to be like at that point, we'll all be on level footing and they'll be like, see, civilization wasn't so fucking great now, is it? And then people be like, no, you were right. Yeah. We told you so. No, I'm sorry, Bigfoot. You know what, human? You know what? We just came out here to say, fuck you. Good luck. Fuck you. And then they stomp back into the woods and like, oh shit, we done fucked up. And then Bigfoot yells back, yeah, you done fucked up.
We got Wi-Fi in here, you stupid shit. You're not learning how to farm berries from us. Go fuck yourself.
Yep. And we deserve it. So... You know, Bigfoot was right.
There's some footage that is out there that's just weird, man. Just so many things that I can't explain as a hoax right away. And the more you look, there is a ton of footage out there that's that unbelievable. That's shocking. I watched this one video where there's this creature on this trail cam, and it goes, from left to right. And then you can see a person enter, and they're clearly stalking this thing. They're clearly looking for it. And they come over this ridge and they stand there for a second looking for it, and they turn around and walk away. And you can see this creature come walking towards the camera underneath this ridge. I mean, it walks right towards the camera, and it's clearly not a person. It's clearly not a fucking person. It just, I don't know, watching the breakdown of these things and learning a little bit about footprints and tracks and stuff like that. Just the Dermal ridge shit should have people doing everything they can to get to the bottom of this. I mean, it's shocking. That's, to me, when you read about the Dermal stuff and the scars and how many people have analyzed these things, and there's so many people who won't say that it's Bigfoot feet. But and that's the only thing that's getting reported is when they say, yep, this is 100% Bigfoot shit. We got this dookie and it's straight up Bigfoot dookie, or this cast is a 100% Bigfoot cast. And I don't think we need to pay attention to those things because it's usually rubber suits and blocks of ice and wooden board cutouts. But I think that what these videos have done in this type of analyzation has made me realize that it's not that shit that we need to be looking for. It's all the stuff like these casts that have dermal ridging on them that's weird. There's tons of people who've analyzed these casts and they haven't said it's a Bigfoot, but they've said officially this is an ape footprint, but again, people just rush past that because it's not a Bigfoot footprint. But there's plenty of things like that. There's plenty of casts to where it's clear they can prove that it's an ape, maybe not a Bigfoot, maybe not a Yeti, but not a fucking bear, not a person with a cast on. The ability to analyze these things have only gotten better through time, and Jeff Meldrum's still fucking at it. I'm sure there's more things that are being debunked in that field more and more, like the wooden cast guy. I read a lot about him, and when you see him holding up his plaster cast, they're famous pictures. I mean, you've seen them 100,000 times in books. And when you're a kid, you look at them and you go, fucking weird, right? And when you look at them now, you're like, that's clearly bullshit. That's clearly, the cast is flat like a piece of wood. You're a fucking moron. So as time goes on and things get debunked like that, I think we need to go back and look at the evidence we already do have. I think there's a stronger argument for Bigfoot than I ever realized, to be honest.
I don't think that as far as evidence go that we're going to get anything better than we've got. At this point, I think the only way we're going to get better evidence is if these forests get clear cut. You know, which with our track record, it could be fucking next Tuesday. But if it is a lost species, it's definitely something that is intentionally steering clear and doesn't want us to be seen. And either they've got their own sort of post-death thing that they do, whether it be burial or whatever, or if they die and just get torn apart by scavengers after death. You know, it's the old argument. We know bears exist, but how many times have you been walking through the woods and found a bear carcass or a deer carcass for that matter?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you know, maybe a lot of you don't live in forested areas. I've got forested areas all around me. I've got deer in my backyard. You know, I can walk across the street. There's a trail that fucking deer are on all the time. I've never found a deer carcass just chilling out there. Does that mean deer are immortal? Magical immortal creatures that never die? No, it just means that scavengers do what scavengers do. And there's even, I don't know if you're familiar with this or if any of our listeners are familiar with this, but there was a show on, I think it was Discovery Channel, maybe Animal Planet, where they took a carcass of, they did different animals that were found. Like, the first one that I saw was a hippo, and they brought it to this area where there was a watering hole so that they knew there was going to be a lot of traffic, and they wanted to see how quick it would be before the whole thing was dismantled. And they had a camera set up, so the whole time they were watching it, and it took a while, but once the skin was pierced and the scavengers were able to get in, the body was dismantled so fucking fast.
Yeah, I watched, it was like a Bigfoot type of research show, and they did that with a rather large elk carcass, and they set that out there, and it wasn't so much scavengers that got to it. It was just after a week, it was gone, period. It was just gone. The bones were gone. Those got dragged off by things. It was just fucking gone completely. And if we're talking about Bigfoot, let's just say that they're 100% real. We're talking about something that is extremely smart. I mean, go on YouTube and look up demonstrations of any type of primate or chimpanzee or whatever, demonstrating how smart they can be. They use fucking tools. They cry. They fucking laugh. They play with each other. They
know sign language.
Yeah.
How many of you guys know sign language?
Exactly. But if this is real, this is a giant primate that's going to be way smarter than a monkey, which are shockingly smart, shockingly endearing. They can show emotion and all these things. These things have to have some type of culture. And we know that their culture is to fucking hide from us. I agree. We're not going to get any new hardcore evidence soon. It's not a chance thing with them. It's their way of life. It's been their way of life apparently for a very, very long time. That's like if we went to Alaska and we saw somebody catch a seal to eat, and we're like, holy fucking shit, how can you do that? I can never dream of being able to catch a sea lion. That's incredible that you could do that. We'll go back home and be like, bro, they caught sea lions. But for them, it's just what they've done for a long fucking time. And it's not going to get harder for them to catch sea lions or seals to eat or for whatever fucking purpose. It's their way of life. And I think for an entity like Bigfoot that's supposedly real, it's almost not even like a skill it has. It's just how it exists, to hide, to be stealth. I don't think it needs to carry off its dead. And we've joked about the fact that they might do that, but that wouldn't fucking surprise me. They're purebred for millennia fucking stealth experts. Their survival as a species depends on it, and I think they're aware of that.
And then they also like to go into national parks and steal kids and hikers.
Yeah, rub up on tents. So there's got to be some assholes. There's got to be some rogue ones, right?
It's true. If they're intelligent, chances are that there's a group that's assholes.
Mm-hmm. You hear about like there's a few different cases, but when people are held up like in cabins and there's a pack of Bigfoots outside throwing rocks and hooping and hollering and stuff like that, and they sleep it out and they wake up in the morning and they're still there. I mean, if that's an intelligent giant ape, it's doing that on purpose. It's fucking trying to terrorize you, and beyond trying to get you out of the area. They were jumping on the roofs on other these places in some accounts. So they were trying to get at them. And again, if it's intelligent, that thing is like, I want to murder you.
And then you've got the people that make their living writing Bigfoot erotica.
Yeah, so maybe shit.
Does that come from firsthand experience though? Maybe as well as being violent and terrifying, they're also sensuous lovers.
Can you imagine being like a writer and just going through a hike and you come across a lake and you spy a Bigfoot bathing itself and it's all backlit by the sun and it sees you and it's all, uh-oh.
And it like kind of sheepishly covers itself,
yeah,
but like in a way like, hey.
Yeah, like uses 2 fingers to cover its nip, but lets its whole bosom be there.
Right.
And, did that slip? I'm a bad Bigfoot girl. And she's like, oh, Lord.
Or boy,
yeah.
Bigfoot boys can be bad too, Mateo.
Yes. And the writer who's observing this can be boy or girl too, but they're just like, you know what? Go home, warm up a bologna sandwich, put it in a...
Warm up a bologna sandwich.
Put it in a cone shape I made out of tinfoil and start writing.
Gotta get that Bigfoot erotic out there.
It was just gleaming and flicking its wet hair around, blowing kissy faces.
Like everybody knows the cliche of like of the romance novel and how the authors describe like the glistening muscles, and also I don't even fucking know. Everybody knows the cliche, but just imagine that romance novel cliche being applied to Bigfoot.
I fucked Homo florensis out of existence, baby. You want me to show you?
You got nothing new to show me? Yeah, just imagine a Bigfoot, and this could be the show art too, Mateo. But just imagine Fabio as a Bigfoot, holding a woman in a pink dress in a gentle yet strong embrace while his Bigfoot locks flow in the wind behind him.
Yep. And he's smart enough to whisper in her ear. You can get it,
He's
baby.
Smart enough to whisper in his ear and then go to her house and terrify the shit out of her man.
Yeah, dude, maybe that's the ones who attack. It's like a triumph
they're just pissed
raid.
off. They're like, you with my girlfriend, boy. I'm going to throw rocks at you until you get the fuck out.
It's like a conquest raid. It's like, I banged your chick. You leave her here, you get out.
Yeah, once you go squatch, you never go back.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.